You are looking at a thriving community of native North Carolina plants and wildlife. This isn't a park or an arboretum, however. These are the grounds of Turner House on the North Carolina State University campus, but it could be your backyard. With a little planning and careful selection of plants, anyone can have a yard that will work in harmony with the environment and provide a haven for our native wildlife, even in the most urban of settings. Generally, most of us don't think about whether a plant is native to our area when we select it for our landscapes at home or at work. We choose plants for other reasons, for their flowers, for their hardiness, or because they were quick growing. Why should we choose native plants over the exotic plants that we have used for years? In North Carolina, our native wildlife is seriously threatened by two major trends. First, wildlife is losing natural habitat at an alarming rate as our increasing population requires more and more land for roads, homes, schools, and businesses. And second, the use of exotic plants in landscaping and the spread of invasive exotic plants is degrading the habitat that remains. Let's first examine how habitat loss is affecting our native wildlife.
We've obviously had a lot of population growth, we've had a lot of urbanization, we've had a lot of roads built, malls put in, and houses put in, and when that happens, there's a fragmentation of habitat that affects all wildlife species. In fact, one of the best ways that the typical person can help wildlife is to make their backyard a wildlife haven. And it can be a small area, less than an acre even. If they supply the basic food, water, cover type things in those situations, and a variety of plant species, especially native plants, they'll provide the needs and cover the needs of a lot of species of wildlife. And if enough people do that over a large area, say in a neighborhood, it can really add up to positive results for wildlife.
It is not just the loss and fragmentation of the land, but also the spread of invasive exotic plants that is hurting wildlife habitat in our state.
Well, the difference between a native plant and an exotic plant is that a native plant is essentially a plant that has evolved or originated in a particular ecosystem. And an exotic plant would be just the contrast, or the contrary to that, is that it's a plant that did not originate or evolved in a particular ecosystem. And there are a lot of exotic plants that have become invasive, that are growing wild in the landscape, that outcompete native plants. A lot of the non-native plants that have become invasive are not that great for wildlife because they don't meet the nutritional needs of many wildlife species. Another reason for using native plants in the landscape is that they celebrate our natural heritage and native plant diversity. And the more I look around me and see non-native plants that have naturalized, become invasive in the natural world, the more I lean toward planting native plants.
Habitat loss? Invasive plants? What can we do to reverse this trend? Any piece of your property that you maintain in native vegetation or convert back to native plants helps offset the losses from development or the spread of invasive plants. If more of us landscape with native plants, our small patches will be reconnected into chains of habitat that allow animals to move across the landscape. The Fisheries and Wildlife Program at NC State has already begun this process at the Turner House.
The goal of the Native Plant Project at Turner House was to create a wildlife oasis in an urban desert. We looked out and said, here we are, a wildlife faculty, and we're looking out at this jammed full of cars parking lot. We said, we're not doing the right thing here. So we decided that we would we'd change the landscape and demonstrate how you can attract wildlife in an urban environment. Then faculty and students collectively worked together to do the manual labor that was required. It's a great place to come out and just commune with nature right here.
Creating a native plant landscape for a suburban or urban yard begins with identifying and designing for the needs of wildlife.
Wildlife have three basic needs: food, water, and cover. You can provide for food and cover in your backyard landscape by including native plants there. Unfortunately, many homeowners instead include non-native invasive species like Elaeagnus and privet, thinking that these plants will help them attract wildlife. Instead, these non-native invasive plants escape from their planted environments, invade nearby natural areas, and degrade wildlife habitats there. There's an awesome array of very attractive native plants that you can use to attract birds, butterflies, and other wildlife to your backyard. Let's look at a couple of these examples that we've included here in our Turner House garden. This is American Beautyberry. It's a deciduous shrub about 6 feet tall that's an excellent choice for a backyard landscape. It loves full sun, it's really easy to establish, and it produces purple fruits in the late summer and fall that are relished by birds like American robins and gray catbirds. This plant actually has green fruits that are beginning to ripen. This is switchgrass. It's a native warm season grass. Other examples of native warm season grasses would be little blue stem, split-beard blue stem, big blue stem, and Indian grass. These native grasses are great for the suburban landscape because they hold their structure through the winter and provide excellent wintertime cover for wildlife. This is ironweed. It's a tall, lanky, perennial wildflower that has purple blooms in the summertime. Nectaring butterflies love it. This is orange coneflower. It's a plant that grows well in dry, sunny sites. The blooms provide nectar for adult butterflies and other pollinating insects. And when the flower heads die, they have seeds that are readily eaten by American goldfinches in the fall. Here we have butterfly weed, which is a hardy, drought-tolerant plant that grows well in full sun. It has orange blooms that are visited by adult butterflies. And the monarch butterfly lays its eggs on butterfly weed, and the caterpillars hatch out and use it as a host plant.
You will also need to design a native plant landscape that meets your needs.
We designed for functionality and aesthetics. Functionality is very much about activities and how you move through a site. So you will identify as a homeowner, you'll identify things that you want to do in your garden spaces. And you will decide where those need to happen, how large they need to be. And then aesthetics are very much about how you would like those garden spaces to look. The neat thing about the design process, once you decide that it's important to you to support wildlife, is that you can actually have almost any garden style realized within this. And when you go through the design process, certainly as a homeowner, you will go through that process and figure out a particular garden style and related themes that you like as a homeowner and that you want to see your garden reflect.
It sounds pretty complicated, and there is a lot to consider, but going native can be done in small steps. You don't have to replant your entire yard at once like they did at the Turner House. Instead, you can start small by replacing an exotic tree with a native one, by making one small area of your yard into a native plant garden, or by replacing a section of turf with a bed of native plants. And the rewards will make you want to do more.
The thing I like most about native plants is watching them grow, watching them change through the seasons, how they bloom, how the leaves change, how the colors change. I definitely think that native plants help attract wildlife, especially birds, providing food for them and cover. And I give them water. So yes, I'm sure that we have a lot more birds in this yard just because we've stayed native. I think if people use more native plants that they can make a difference in our water quality, in our environment, and that's one of the small things we can do for them.
You can make a difference. Every person who discovers the beauty and rewards of going native adds to the available habitat for wildlife. And with our combined efforts, we can reclaim an important piece of our natural heritage.
To learn more about the benefits of native plants to wildlife and how to select and locate native plants for your own landscape, visit the Going Native website at www.ncsu.edu/goingnative.